Hello, welcome to Lesson 16 of Proverbs, a Letter to My Son. We're nearing the end of this series, and Lesson 16 is absolutely beautiful. You'll like it. We'll be using the New American Standard Translation for this lesson also. In this lesson, we're going to look at the Proverbs 31 woman, this superwoman that people look up to as, how can she do all these things in one day? We need to study and learn what the text says and not what someone says about it. Remember the verse in Acts 17:11? Now these were more noble-minded than those in Thessalonica, for they received the word with great eagerness, examining the scriptures daily to see whether these things were so. So we're going to look at Proverbs 31 for what the text says, and I want to teach you the context, the full context, and some application. But once you understand the context, you can make appropriate application on your own. So let's look at this excellent woman. First, I ask you, is this excellent wife a man's or a woman's idea of a good woman? What do you think? I've asked numbers of people, and half the people say it's a man's idea, and half of them say it's a woman's idea. But which is it? Well, let's look at the text. Proverbs 31, verse 10, and we're only looking at verses 10 through 31. We looked at the earlier part of the chapter when we discussed alcohol in an earlier lesson. So we're just going to look at the first few verses of the chapter to get the tone of where the chapter is going. In verse 1, it says, the words of King Lemuel, the oracle. Aha! It's a man's idea of a good woman. Well, let's look at the rest of the verse. Which his mother taught him. Aha! So it's a woman's idea of a good woman. Lemuel is merely recording for posterity what his mother taught him. Now, what's an oracle? His mother's teaching him an oracle. Well, basically, it's a mother's deep, deep burden for her son's welfare. So, as we look at this chapter, Lemuel's mom is the one that's doing the teaching. And she wants her son to find a wife that will be good for him. It's important to look at the chapter from this standpoint. The text is being taught to Lemuel. Remember? The words of King Lemuel, which his mother taught him. So it's being taught to royalty, but it's being taught by royalty. His mother would be what? Queen Mother. So royalty is teaching royalty about something. And if Lemuel finds this woman and marries her, what does she become positionally? Well, she becomes a queen. So then this section is taught by royalty, taught to royalty, and taught about royalty. This excellent wife, or virtuous woman, as the King James calls her, is a queen. So keep that in mind. She's a queen, not just average person. And we'll see that how that affects the context of the chapter as we proceed. When you get to verse 2, it says, what, O my son? What, O son of my womb? And what, O son of my vows? And you're saying, what in the world are they trying to get across? Well, it's quite simple. What, my son? Lemuel, I'm your mother legally. Lemuel, I'm your mother physically. Lemuel, I'm your mother spiritually. Who has more right to advise you than me? Pay attention and do what I say. So she's saying, listen up. I've got some good advice for you. Pay attention and do what I tell you. I believe that verse 3 is the key verse for the whole chapter. And why do I say that? She says in verse 3, don't give your strength to women or to that which destroys kings. So what's she saying? In the first part of the verse, she says, don't become addicted to alcoholic beverages. It can ruin your life. Be a responsible man. And then she says, don't chase anything with a squirt. Find a good wife, or we should say a good queen, and make her your own and enjoy just your wife. So this is the key verse for the chapter. And in my mind, it teaches me that the whole chapter goes together. So Lemuel's mother now is teaching this whole chapter in one session. Keep that in mind. When we look at verses 4 through 9, he teaches don't develop a desire for alcoholic beverages. Why? Because this man is a king. He's judge, jury, and executioner for the kingdom. And when people come to him for help, he needs to be there to help. So she says, don't develop a desire. Instead, be a responsible king. So that's the first 9 verses. And then we come to the excellent wife, or as the King James calls her, the virtuous woman. Now, as I said, many people think she's this superwoman. They ask, how can this woman do all these things that she's doing in one day and take care of the kids and do the dirty diapers and do the dishes and cooking and serve? Oh, man, she can't do all that. Donna had a book entitled The Virtuous Woman and Other Impossible Dreams. I have no idea where it got to. It probably lost. But in this book, this woman is totally discouraged because she tried to do everything that she perceived this woman did and totally fell on her nose. She couldn't do it. And she wrote a book explaining why she's disappointed with it. But ladies, guys, I'm going to show you today why the women of today don't need to feel guilty that they're not like her. Why? Because they're not like her. This woman's a queen. Remember that as we proceed through this discussion. Now, this word excellent wife, Strong's Concordance defines this word as one who is strong, efficient, and with exceptional abilities. Let's rephrase this. Her strong character, strong biblical morals, ample physical strength, good confidence, sense of self-worth are all enhanced by her excellent abilities and her willingness to take personal responsibility for the care of the castle, all of which makes her a virtual army of one. So this is the woman. That's her character. That's her person. But did you know that this word excellent or virtuous in verse 10 is the same Hebrew word as strength in verse 3? It says, don't give your strength to women. So Lemuel is this same type of man that his mother's trying to get him to find in a woman. The same character, the same responses, the same abilities. Find a woman who will be responsible. Think about it. If he marries this woman, she'll become a queen, right? How many queens do you know who get up every morning and go into the kitchen and slave over the stove, fix breakfast, sets her servants down and sets her family down and says, now eat? Can you see Queen Elizabeth doing that? I don't think so. So we're going to get a little different view here as we go through here. Before we proceed, though, I want to ask you, have you ever noticed what the text does not say? It's just as important to know what it doesn't say as it is to know what it does say. What does it not say? It says nothing about love, affection, time spent with a husband, time spent with the kids. No, nothing, because it's totally involved in her list of her abilities and responsibilities in and around the castle. How is she going to care for the home? There's nothing relational. It doesn't say the kids love her. It doesn't say she loves the kids. I'm not saying that either don't, but it just doesn't say. But it does talk about her abilities and responsibilities in and around the home. And I want to submit to you, even in a more basic sense, that this chapter is a shopping list for a bachelor king looking for a queen. Ladies, that takes you out of the loop. Are you a queen? No. Is your husband a king? No. So watch as we go. This will take the guilt and inferiority feelings away. Before we proceed, let's jump to verse 15 in the chapter. It says, she rises while it is still night and gives food to her household and portions to her maidens. Now you ask, how does she have time to do all the things that she does? Look at this word portions. In English, it sounds like she sits all her servants down and feeds them. in the Hebrew, this portions are job assignments. So she does get up at dark 30, and she gathers all of her servant girls around, and she assigns to each of them a portion of the work that needs to be done in the castle. Now she has assigned all of these things out that are her responsibility, and now she's free to do all the things she wants to do. So how does she find time to do all these things that she does? She has all day. And notice she's doing those things because she wants to. Nobody's forcing her. She's doing them because she wants to. So here's this woman that has all day to do what she wants. Let's see what this woman is worth to her husband personally. First, he can trust her with his heart. She's totally devoted to him. You see that in verse 11a. He can trust her with his possessions. She won't spend him into the poorhouse. She has good spending habits. He can trust her to be faithful to him no matter what, even in hard times. And she enhances his reputation in the community. And when men and women see her out in the community, they say, "Ooh, that's the king's wife. Isn't she something? Wow, he's lucky." Before we proceed, I want to mention this chapter is a poem, and each verse starts with a different Hebrew letter. So the logic is not point by point by point. It's kind of interspersed within this. So we're going to look at these topics as they affect what we're trying to get across. So what is she worth to him in and around the castle? Well, she's a good manager of the home. I should say a good manager of the castle. We saw verse 15 where she assigns out the jobs. And then in verse 27, she's a good manager of the home. So she comes back and checks to see that these women have done their jobs, that they've done them well, and they have completed them. Now, what does she like to do? Well, she likes to shop. Most women do. But as you read through, you read where she goes out and she finds raw material, the wool and flax, because she knows that the end product of her sewing is no better than the raw materials that go into it. So she likes to go out there and find them herself. When she finds food for variety that the servants can cook, she goes out and finds it herself. She could send her servants to do all this, but she chooses not to. Now, what else does she like to do? She likes to sew. Now, if you look at Proverbs 31, the way average teacher preaches looks. By the way, I've found it interesting that many times a good preacher, a good teacher, good men will hear someone preach or teach something and they'll say, "Ooh, that's neat. I'll teach that." But they don't take the time to dig into the text and find out what does it really say, not what does someone say about it. So when we look at what it really says, then yes, she sews. Does she have to? No. Does women of today have to? No. If a wife goes out and can buy a shirt at Kmart or Walmart for the same price or less than it would cost to buy the thread and the fabric and the pattern, not counting the cost of the sewing machine, to sew a shirt together, has she fulfilled her responsibility? I say yes. By the way, how many women of today would sew, if you're going to do exactly as she does, which a lot of teachers, preachers teach, if you're going to do that, then will the women of today go out and buy their own material to make their own thread and to make their own fabric and to cut it up and sew it together by hand? They didn't have sewing machines. How many women these days do you think would sew a dress together by hand totally, make their own thread? Oh, you may find someone who just wants to try it as a novelty, but no, people today won't do that. But this woman liked to sew, and that was good, but not necessary. She runs a wholesale and retail business. In verse 24, she said she makes linen garments and sells them. Well, who she sell them to? She sells them to the public. So there's the retail business. And she makes girdles or belts and sells them to the tradesmen. What are belts? Well, really, it's like a scabbard for a sword. I'm told that one taken in battle is highly prized. But she makes these and makes good quality, and she sells them to the tradesmen at wholesale. So she is running. She's smart. She's running a wholesale and a retail business. She likes also to exercise, to keep herself strong so that she can do all the things that she requires of herself. Wait a minute. What do you mean, requires of herself? No one's forcing her to do these things. She's doing it because she wants to. And she wants to have the strength so that she can accomplish all of these things. What else? Well, she likes to garden. She buys a piece of property and plants a vineyard and has the produce from it. Does women of today need to have a garden to be an excellent wife? No. It's nice if you do. It's an extra. But a woman of today doesn't have to have a garden to be an excellent wife. Remember that. We're comparing average woman of today to a queen. You know, if he had married someone who became queen and sat around and did nothing more than let people wait on her hand and foot, and she was no more than a showpiece, no one would think that odd. Can you picture Queen Elizabeth doing these things? No. She's a figurehead. But Lemuel's mom said, you need more than that. You need a responsible wife. Find one. What else does she like to do? She likes to help the unfortunate. So in verse 20, it says that she goes out and she offers help. And if people will accept her help, she'll give it. If not, she'll walk on by. She also likes to feed the king meals with variety. Remember now, she's a queen. You look at verse 14, it says she's like merchant ships. She brings her food from afar. So she goes out and finds these out of the ordinary things to make the king's meal special. Well, ladies, you can do that today. Donna, Gregory, your mom goes out and finds these interesting things, and our meals are with variety. So how does she compare to this excellent woman? Very favorably, okay? Not the same slop every day. So let's look at her outlook on life. She has a genuine biblical fear of the Lord. In the text it says, she that fears the Lord will be praised. Well, this woman was praised. So she did indeed have a genuine biblical fear of the Lord. Ladies, if you have a genuine biblical fear of the Lord, like we talked about in lesson 2, then you are equal to her in that standpoint. So don't feel inferior or look down at yourself for it. What else? She smiles at the future. She's not afraid of what the next day is going to come. She's prepared well, and she has a good outlook. And she doesn't fear for her home because she's planned well. The family has clothes, all that they need, and there's no need for her to get excited and have to run out last minute and get something. What else? She feels like what she does is good and productive. Ladies, you can feel good about what you're doing. What's more important than growing a family? Your kids, your wife, your husband, all of this. Guys, the same way. The relationship is the most important thing. And remember in Proverbs 31, there's nothing relational. But she feels good about what she accomplishes. Ladies, do you feel good about what you accomplish? I hope you do. One more thing. She speaks wisdom and teaches it in kindness. So this woman is a kind, gentle woman, and she likes to teach wisdom. But you have to be wise to teach wisdom. There's an opportunity for each of you women to gain wisdom. Go back to lesson 2 and 3, and you'll see how to gain wisdom, to gain a fear of the Lord, which results in wisdom. Okay, this is the woman. Now, Lemuel's mom switches gears here because she teaches the basis for marriage. What is the basis for marriage? It says, charm is deceitful, beauty is vain, but she that fears the Lord shall be praised. So with charm, what you see is not what you get. This young lady that gets all the dates in high school, all the guys want to date her, and she goes from one guy to the next. When it goes into the marriage, the charm generally doesn't go in with it. So if that's all you base your marriage on, disaster is waiting in the end. With beauty, what you get is not what you can keep. What are you going to do when this beautiful wife you selected loses her beauty in old age? What is there left for the marriage? can end in disaster. But with the fear of the Lord, what you see is what you get. And what you get is what you can keep. So, guys, remember, this whole thing is a shopping list for a bachelor looking for a wife. And young guys, you bachelors out there, when you're looking for a wife, look for a wife that fears the Lord. Don't base your marriage on her beauty or her charm, but find someone who fears the Lord. Now, how should her husband treat her after they're married? Well, he should praise her personally and publicly. Good job caring for the castle. Notice how he praises her and the children praise her. Do you ever stop to think? The children say, "Good job, Mom." Notice it doesn't say, "I love you, Mom. Thanks for what you're doing." No, it's, "Good job taking care of the castle, Mom." And the husband the same way. "Good job taking care of the castle." But guys, we need to praise our wives. Tell them they're doing good. Tell them when the food is good. Tell them the good job they've done. If we praise them, they'll keep on doing those things that drew us to her in the beginning. If we never tell her how good she's doing, she may just give up and say, "What's the use?" And she won't be doing those same things that you married her for. Okay, so that's the chapter. What can we conclude about the excellent woman of today? Well, she cannot and should not compare herself on equal terms with this queen. She's not a queen, because today's woman is not a queen. So there is no need to feel guilty or inferior. No need at all. So what can the woman of today gain from this passage with reference to herself? First, she should have a genuine biblical fear of the Lord. I submit to you that most people in our churches today do not have a genuine biblical fear of the Lord. And that's why they practice their little pet sins and aren't living good and godly. Go to chapter 2 of Proverbs, lesson 1, 2, 3, 4, and see how to study in order to gain a biblical fear of the Lord and ultimately gain wisdom. I encourage you to do that. What else about today? She has the inner strength and feels good about who and what she is. That's the woman of today. She can feel good about who she is, and what she accomplishes. Ladies, I hope you can. She should not be worried about the welfare of her home because she's planned well. Donna goes out and finds these clothes we need at bargain prices. I'm never there. I don't seem to be lucky enough to find those things. But she does, and we have all the clothes we need. And ladies, you can do the same thing for your home. Woman of today can feel like what she does is good and productive, have a good outlook on life. And the woman of today can speak with wisdom and teach in kindness. Yes, that's the woman of today. That's what we can learn from this passage. Now, we say she should have a genuine biblical fear of the Lord. This will drive her to be kind, wise, responsible, and compassionate. So these are things that the woman of today can be with regard to herself. But now let's look at what the woman of today can be with reference to her husband. He should be able to trust her with his heart. These are the same things we looked at in the first part of the discussion about the virtue, the excellent wife. He can trust her with his possessions. She won't spend him into the poorhouse. Finances are one of the biggest things that lead to divorce these days. He can trust her to be faithful to him for life. I'll be faithful to Donna, my wife, and she'll be faithful to me. We both know that we will, and it's a joy. And he can trust her to enhance his reputation in the church and in the community. Now, these are virtues that any woman of today could and should strive to acquire and maintain. So this is the virtuous woman of today, the excellent wife of today. Okay, so we've talked about the woman. What about the bachelors? Remember, this is a shopping list for a bachelor. So King Lemuel was a bachelor. So, you bachelors out there, This is a good list if all you want is a good housekeeper. But there's more. Let's go to Titus 2, verses 4 and 5. It says that the older women should teach younger women to love their husbands, to love their children, to be sensible. What's that mean? To be moderate as to opinion and passion. They're not real picky. To be pure, that is, morally pure. To be workers at home, or actually keepers at home. That's one of the things you want, guys. You don't want somebody that's sloppy. She should be kind and subject to her own husbands, or obedient to her own husbands. Why? So that the word of God will not be dishonored. These are things you should look for in a wife. Yes, you can look for things that Proverbs 31 teaches, but guys, there's more. You want a woman who's loving, kind, loves your kids, and there's just more. So I encourage you to look for these things, guys, when you look for a wife. This is Proverbs 31. Ladies, there's no need to feel guilty or inferior to this woman, because she's not doing all those things that average woman perceives she does. She has all day to do what she wants. You do not. So please, don't feel guilty, and don't have any inferiority feelings about why you're not like her, because you're not. And praise the Lord, you're not. Okay, I hope you'll join me in the next lesson when we look at the logic of the book. I'll see you then. Thank you.